All righty, Christina. Hi, how are you? Did you get some lunch?
I had an
She
apple.
probably skipped lunch.
Well,
Not enough.
I had an inner dialogue to do at Cal Poly. So as because I'm in the Hexa program with Jamie, um, so I had to do that first. So here's my next.
All right,
Excited.
your next project. Well, I wanted to introduce you, but I'm not sure I know everything about you. Can I start with what I know and then you can fill in the, okay. I know Christina is a wife and a mother of 3, and she has been a Cuesta student, and she works in financial aid. And are you a specialist 3?
Yeah, I think we're all just called 4? Specialists, financially specialists.
Oh, okay. Well, we've given you a promotion now. And I know you're going to Cal Poly, and are you a graduate student there, or you're getting your bachelor's?
Oh, yeah, I'm a graduate school.
Is that social sciences?
Hexa program, I think it's in education. It's somehow weaved into mathematics somehow, but yeah, it's for future to be a counselor one day.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And the way we're going to work things today, we're going to we have a list of about 7 questions that we have pulled from some of the book guides for the Citizen book. And Christina is going to start reacting to some of those, and we'd like you to join in if you would like to. There's a small enough group, you can just raise your hand in the screen. You don't have to use the hand thing. Unmute and let us know. And we'll be working through those questions. Then we're going to take a break at an appropriate point. We have 4 gift cards, so we're going to do those, $10. You can have your choice if you win for Jamba Juice, Starbucks, or Scout. So juice or coffee. And we'll do the other 2 at the end. I do want to, I was going to tell you some more, but when I met Christina around campus, because she's been there for a while, and so have I. She's come to some of our poetry readings, especially to Black History Month things. And she's always a very exuberant participant. I've also been in a book club with her, so we're very pleased to have her here today. Let me just read a little bit about Citizen, just a short quote that I thought I had here. Oh gosh. I was so prepared. Well, I don't find it. It must have flittered away. Here it is. Sorry. This is from the LA Times. And this was an author and a book critic just from the other day. And she was talking about Claudia Rankin, who is a renowned academic, scholar, poet, essayist, and the author of our book, The Citizen. And she's Jamaican born, but came to the US as about a 7 or 8-year-old. So our LA Times writer says, Rankin shares difficult conversations about race and inequality in America, conversations with friends and strangers, as well as simply overheard. She offers no easy solutions, but challenges us to examine ourselves and our place in the American conversation. So Christina said to me when I said, the library book club is choosing this, she goes, that's a very bold choice for you guys. I said, it is. And I'd like to just say that this is meant to be a safe space where we can reflect, share some thoughts, and do just what Rankin is asking us to do, examine ourselves and our place in the American conversation. So Christina, anything else you'd like to add about your introduction? And then if not, we can start off with those questions that you were most interested in. And I do have a couple screen shares I have ready. I have the tennis one, and also the black against white one. So I can do those if you want those, you just tell me, okay?
Yeah, no, those are perfect. Thank you. Sorry, I'm in the office today, so I'm trying to make sure nothing will disturb us. So my name is Christina Schollers. I started here in 2014 as a student. I was kind of lost. I went to Fresno State originally, and it didn't work out too well for me. I was a first generation student, so coming to school, I followed everything my dad wanted, go to school, do well. I did that. And then when I hit college, I felt like I was kind of in a lost place. So I got my second chance here at Cuesta, and it's meant the world to me. I've met some amazing, amazing people, and I don't think I'd be in grad school without Cuesta, just because I figured out who I was, but just having so much like real support. I mean, I genuinely met people that were excited for my growth, my progress, my success, and I never had experienced that before. So a lot of the work that I do here, not always in financial aid, but around campus, my goal is to also help and pull some of those students that were in my role or my situation to be leaders as well, because that I think one of the biggest things is community, and I never really had a community, especially being multiracial. And so I want students when they're at Cuesta to find their own community, whether I'm a part of it or not, but I want them to know that, you know, there's resources and people out there, and you have to be your own advocate. So that's enough about me though. So I'm excited. Thank you so much for all of you coming. Pat, I have to say you have one of the brightest smiles, and I have always noticed that on the board. So thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Christina, did you want to start out with the icebreaker? And we can type it in the chat as well as announcing it.
Did everybody have a chance to read the book? Or
some of it,
or even parts of it. But what I really wanted, if you have read some of the book, I just wanted everybody to kind of close their eyes for a minute and just think about those emotions that you felt reading the book, whether it was, you know, some of the words, some of the images that you saw. And it's not just about what's in the book, you know, some of the images that you saw in the book reminded you about maybe what you've seen in the media, what you've experienced, what you've seen, what you've heard before. And I just wanted you to remember those feelings that you felt while going through this book. And I think that'll kind of help bring us back to the mindset we were in during that time. Okay, and if you want to open your eyes or whenever you're ready.
So shall we go around the room, or would you like us to put it in the chat?
Yeah, so do you feel comfortable talking about it out loud, how you felt? Okay, so if you feel comfortable talking about it, you can. And if you feel comfortable putting in the chat what emotions were drummed up, I would appreciate that. Elizabeth?
Yeah, there was one section where it was talking about boys, you know, boys being boys, and bullying, and it brought to mind like the tough guys that we have in our culture, this idea that men need to be tough and that fighting is okay, and being unkind to each other is part of like a coming of age experience. Like, and it was I hadn't seen that tied into like racism like that before, and I felt like it was sort of a new insight for me of like, okay, like it helped me see how like feminism or sexual egalitarianism or gender egalitarianism can like be we're all you know in this together, and it's all interrelated.
And I think that's and that's a really good point to bring up, because I know this book focuses on the life of Black citizens, but really talking about being, you know, transitioning from boy to man, or the words like man up. Those are words that cross over through all of our cultures. I know for me personally, I'm very conscious about that, having two boys. We have 3 kids, but I'm very conscious about reminding my husband it's okay to cry. It's okay to have those hard moments, and my boys as well, that it's okay to cry. It's hard because you know, I wish I never really had to remind my children as boys that it's okay to have those emotions. But we do, because if we don't, they'll continue that cycle, which can sometimes cause pent up anger that leads to something more in the future. But yeah, I've had to address that with my kids personally. Anybody else? Yeah, Susan?
Hi, Christina. It's good to see you. I miss seeing you.
Aw.
I have to admit right out front, I couldn't finish the book. I tried. I would start it, I'd put it down. I'd start it, I'd put it down. I would look through the pictures, I'd put it down. And sometimes that happens for me, like when I'm reading a book for book work. It could be any book. But I had body feelings, I guess, when I opened the book and started to read and looked at pictures. Like one picture comes in my mind of that house that's kind of by itself. It's kind of like a white house, sort of with a blue sky behind it. And I guess the word that would describe my experience with this book thus far, because I still want to read it. Yeah, is unease. I would start to read words on a page, or I'd look at a picture, and physically inside my body, I would start to feel unease. That's the best word I can describe. And the thing, the parts of this book experience for me, where I was able to engage more with the material, was the interviews with her, like on the LibGuide where she's speaking. I really liked hearing her present ideas. And what I really engaged with too were the videos that she and her husband made illustrating. It was such a creative idea, but it was so effective, like illustrating material such as the three, like I read about that, I guess on the LibGuide, it's a video of 3 young Black students in a shoe store. I don't know if you saw that one. And they're just coming in, and it had some clothes, like it's like a sports store. And actually, I read that she was teaching in Claremont at one of the colleges there, and those were students. Those were her students that volunteered to like be in this video. But it was just them coming into the store, and they were starting to look at things, and it was like watching them again. Like I had this incredible feeling of unease. And the other one was like a woman on a bus, I think, or a train. It was something about the seat on the, is this person gonna sit next to me, or who was sitting next to each other. And so that's my experience. So I hope to be able to read the book. I just haven't been able to do so. So I had to approach it in different ways.
And I think that's what's hard too is, you know, some of this drummed up childhood memories. And I think, like, for example, was this picture. And there were two things.
Can you hold it closer? Just a little bit closer to the screen?
It was the tennis player.
Yeah.
So there are 2 childhood memories that came to mind. And one was when I was a kid, my dad had said, I used to wrap my sweater around my waist, and my dad would say, "Why are you doing that? Only white girls do that." You know, and I was like, what? And as a kid, I'm not recognizing like what that meaning is. The other thing that, and I was an athlete, I played softball, I played basketball, I just love sports. So I look at this image, and I, in my head personally, I think, you know, she doesn't realize the damage that she's doing. She's having fun, but Serena's body as a tennis player has always been heavily criticized because of her body type is different. And I think about myself when I was in high school, and I'm meeting with my doctor, and she's like, "You're overweight." And at the time I had a very athletic body. I was always running, I was always exercising, because it's just that active lifestyle that I had. And so the words sometimes that are used or the images that are displayed while she was having fun and the other people in the crowd were having fun, I'm gonna guess 9 times out of 10, Serena, and then maybe there were a couple other Black people, but everybody else around her didn't look like her. So for this moment, even though she thinks she's having fun, she's really doing a detriment to an athlete, if that makes any sense. Because, and she's not respecting what we would call, she's not respecting the game. Because the game is about sportsmanship, and I wouldn't consider this sportsmanship or respecting the player. And so it was sad, but you know, the words that my doctor used about me, I don't think she really understood the damage that is relayed, because then for me, I was like, oh, okay, I'll just solve it by eating less, or I won't eat at all. And in reality, I don't think she understood how active I was as a person, and that my body type is just going to be different than what she would probably see most of her patients look like. But thanks. I know this book was kind of tough, and that's why I told Denise as soon as I read some, I was like, Denise, I mean, I didn't say what the hell are you thinking, but I was just like, what the heck is this? Like, some of this stuff is really tough to swallow. And I think when I first looked at it, I put it down. I was like, I don't think I can do this. And then you read it again. I'm like, okay, I guess I'll push through. But yeah, there's, you know, this Jim Crow. It's so interesting to see that street sign. My last name is Schollers. And turns out in Texas, there is a street named Schollers. And my 4th generation grandfather was white. And so he was very well known in Orange, Texas as a doctor. But looking further into his history, because of our project, we have a genogram we do in graduate school. But he was a Confederate soldier when he was 16 years old. And I have documents that were given to me maybe almost 15 years ago. I didn't really understand them until I started working on this project last September. But my great-great-great-grandfather was his son, and his son was listed as a servant on these documents at that time. And so I always wonder, you know, like, you know, my great-great-great-grandfather being half white and half Black, and you can tell he's light skinned, his hair was straight. And it's kind of interesting because I can see those traits in my father. Looking at his hair texture, it's not as coarse. And then you see it follow down. Now I'm multiracial, my mother was Mexican, but you can kind of see that coming down the bloodline for my siblings as well. But there's that give and take with it. It's so, I mean, I want to go to that street. I want to see the name Schollers. At the same time, it's kind of hard because there's some history to it. I have to admit, my bloodline, he was a Confederate soldier, and he, you know, and maybe his mind was changed, you know, when he ended up having Black children, but I don't know. That's a tough one to see. And sometimes we have to admit that's part of our life, you know, it's part of our story, but it doesn't have to be the ending. So in one of the questions, did anybody have anything else they wanted to say? How they felt, what they thought?
I was going to say one thing about, I looked into, and then we'll get to Tina next, the book, the page 6 that has the Jim Crow street.
Mm-hmm.
I looked into that, and it's actually I think it was Louisiana. It's since been changed. And it was actually not a reference to Jim Crow, the time period and the oppression. It was somebody's name, and his name was actually, and I'm going to forget, you know, Joseph Jim Crow. He developed the land, and they named it after him. Mm-hmm. So the reference, you know, you look at it and you're thinking, how could any city council approve that name for a street development? It's been, like I said, it's been changed, but actually the reference it was a different reference, even though it gives off a like, whoa. So kind of a interesting double twist, you know, kind of a twist on that.
Yeah. It's rough to carry a name sometimes like that, you know.
Yeah.
It's not easy. Tina, and what did you want to say?
You asked what feelings the book brought up. For me, it just brought up this vague guilt. I grew up in Orange County where there was, you couldn't find a Black person anywhere. And then I moved to SLO County where you couldn't find a Black person anywhere. So having it focused on Black people and their interior thoughts just brought it home to me, how it's like every day, all day, getting a barrage of feeling that hostility from the dominant culture.
So
and I felt guilty because I'm the dominant culture.
And see, for me, I felt moving from Fresno, which I consider a melting pot. I grew up with a majority of Asian and Latina friends. White classmates were a minority, and Black classmates were a minority. And so moving to SLO felt like a shock to me the culture shock experience, and I'm having a really hard time for my first 2 years to get out. But I will say, the low crime rate and not having to worry about that it just felt like a cloud lifted off of me by moving to SLO. But then there were things that took place, like 3 months after living here. There was the cross burning. I think that was in Arroyo Grande outside of the girl's home. And so I just instantly was like, my dad is going to drive these 3 hours and drag me back home because he's going to be like, what were you thinking? I told you. So things like that, I personally had never experienced or even I think thought of, because I remember I graduated in 2007. And I remember telling myself, wow, like, I know it's going to get better. I know things are going to change because my husband is also multiracial. And so there was something we talked about where, as we see more interracial couples and marriages take place, we think there's progression being made. But in reality, that's not always the case. And I think these last 4 years, we witnessed that. And I know 17-year-old me would have never imagined this would take place. But I will say there has been change. I know it's been a little rough, but I guess I put it into higher education this point. We have a lot of Black students play for athletics for Cuesta College. And a lot of times these students are not from this area. So if we are willing to recruit students like that, we also have to be willing to support them on the front that it's not always just financial. Sometimes it is helping them build a community. And I know as a student worker, I used to tour families all the time. And I would say Cuesta is like the best school you want to go to, because it's not only that I was saying this just to say it, is that I wholeheartedly believed it. But on the educator point, and now that I'm looking at it, on the inside, looking out, I think that, we have a lot of work to do for some of the Black students that we are recruiting into these schools, Cal Poly as well. And I think we saw that during the Black Lives Matter movement with the students. They're not happy, but I think they're not happy because I think they're feeling they're being left out to dry a little bit. We don't have housing for them. We don't have some of the things that some of the CSUs like Cal Poly would have, is where they have a housing established. But we also don't really have much. We have sports, but sports isn't everything, I guess you could say, if that makes sense. Now, I love sports, trust me. I will be watching the Super Bowl, but I have to admit that for some of these students, it's not everything for them. And I think they realize that eventually. Yeah, Elizabeth?
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Thanks. There's like, whenever I hear someone say that, SLO is so white and, there aren't many Black people here, I totally get that, and I understand that, and I agree with that. And also I immediately think of the men's colony, the prison, because most of my students at the men's colony are Black people or brown people. Maybe there are like 2 white guys in there. and it's like and people will say that, and it may immediately think, I know where they are. They're in the prison. We've locked them up. And honestly, like, I used to think of them as like sort of having all this free time to think, but my experience is they don't have free time. They're working full time, and they get their wages in prison they're lucky if they earn $1 an hour, and they have families outside that they want to support and help. And in the same time, a lot of them are big guys for whatever reason. Maybe they're more intimidating and more easily targeted, but they don't get enough to eat. So they're hungry. And the only food that's available for them to buy is like dried, processed, refined food. And so that, and it's like they're working full time, they're working overtime in order to go to school at night. Like they'll sometimes have to skip dinner. They have to decide, like, do I want dinner or do I want to go to school? And like, I just wanted to share that like, that's what comes to mind for me when people say, like, where are all the Black people? It's like, we locked them up and we're using them basically as slaves to make shoes and I don't know, other sundries. And use them. They use them for labor there too. So if they need something built, they like hire them for like maybe 60 cents an hour. And then so many people are scared to teach there. And I'm hoping that more instructors will want to work there, because at first I was intimidated because they bring you in for the training, and it's basically like, here's all the people that got into fights, here's photos of that, here's how you clean up here's what you do if there's a crime scene, and then people like run the other way. But really, then you go inside and you realize, like, it's just like us in this room. They're just people. They're just like us, and all of us have made mistakes. But because of the racism in our culture, they end up in prison and we're out here. And they're just the same as us. And there's nothing to be scared of. And so like, I see this huge community that we can reach as Cuesta. So I'm hoping that we may do more of that in the future.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. My father was very protective of us as children, and I hated it. I'd get in trouble if I showed up at 4 p.m. My dad would assume I was running the streets, but the problem, so there was the good part in that because I stayed out of trouble. But I agree, Elizabeth, it wasn't until I started working here and working with some of our formerly incarcerated students that I really learned that they had so much to offer, and a lot of those stereotypes that we create in our head because of what we're seeing in the media. So to bridge that, we have Gregory Williams, one of our formerly incarcerated students. He'll be sharing his experience on the movie Time, the documentary. I know Allie's been helping with that. And Renata, our counselor, who does help with the CMC students, she'll be moderating with him. But Allie, do you want to share a little bit of that?
Yes, so yeah, Denise, you're so good. Yeah, so here's the Black History Month page. And so that event that Christina's talking about is going to be on the 18th from 5 to 6. So basically, we've been working with Renata and with Gregory to talk about, Gregory's experience being incarcerated and the themes that are also talked about in Time and how he relates that to himself as being formerly incarcerated and what it's like to not be incarcerated anymore and try to figure out how to adjust and to live in society. And he also talks about what that's like for him as a Black man. And, that touches on the conversation we're having here about the biases that there are because of of racism and stereotypes that we've learned in the media and that we've internalized. So, so hopefully we can generate a good conversation about that at that event. And it's a really good film. So we're encouraging everyone to watch that beforehand, before they come, so they can listen to Gregory's experience and Renata's, and then they can ask questions at the end of the event.
Yeah, thank you.
And I just wanted to mention really quickly, sorry, Christina, that Gregory Williams is an ASCC senator. So I just wanted to acknowledge him as well.
Yeah, thank you. And I think Donna Howard and Andrea DeVitt, the counselor, they had presented this idea of the movie, the documentary Time being shown. And, you know, the story playing out of a Black man in prison, a single mother raising the kids, that's a story that I've heard a million times and we would consider a stereotype. But to elevate it and to make it into something that I felt would be so much more, we brought Gregory in. And so I'm really excited. I've heard a little bit of his story. He's an EOPS student, very active, single parent. Is also working on a nonprofit with his mom, and he has dreams to open up his own facility to help other students or formerly incarcerated people. So he has big plans, and I'm just really thrilled for that opportunity. So thank you for bringing up the prison system. That's something that I too have had to work past, and thankfully we have a program here that's working with those students. Because without having an opportunity to talk with them in person, I don't think my biases would have changed. Okay. Oh, yes, Denise.
I was just going to say, Allie and Christina and I met with Gregory a couple weeks ago, and he's on Zoom, of course, and he's a great guy, very articulate, very telegenic, very authentic. And I think he'll have a really quite an impact responding to the film in terms of what resonated with him or how it underscored his own life story. He's got a daughter who's a lawyer and all these interests, as well as raising two little kids. So I think he's going to be very impactful. So.
And Jamie, what did you want to?
I just wanted to add that I was glad to see that 13th, the documentary, is also on the list of the viewing list for this month, because I think that adds a really important historical context and background for that prison industrial complex, for the last 150 years.
Yeah, the documentary 13th really does tie in well with time. The 13th Amendment is what ended up kind of retrapping Black people into the system. We don't look at it like slavery, but Elizabeth is right. It's kind of like slavery, and time is showing you the product of what happens to a Black family when their husband, their father, gets caught into the system because of the 13th. So yeah, thank you. That was a great tie-in. So one of the things, part of our questions, we talked about that image on page 37 with the tennis player. But do you feel like without that image and just thinking about the words, do you feel like the images kind of helped the book?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so too. I think even there's this page, it's on page 52.
And I think we had both Bailey and Pat raising their hands too.
Oh yeah,
chance.
Who wants to go first?
Pat, your hand was up.
No, I'll defer to Bailey first. I'll follow you, Bailey.
Pat, put me on. Well, I've lost my train of thought because I was going to page 52. You sure you don't want to go, Pat?
Okay, I'll jump in. I was just gonna, kind of like some of you have said, it does bring a lot of different emotions or unease. I haven't read the book, but I've got the Goodreads app that I use for what I like to read in books coming up. And so I was reading some of the summaries after deciding to join today. And it's a lot of the little incidents of microaggressions and things that, I certainly didn't catch maybe earlier, and still probably don't half the time. But coworkers and friends of mine, friends of color, and some Black coworkers and colleagues have shared some stories and things that then, they'll point out little subtle comments, references, or just even the way something would strike me is very different than how they might read into it. And then when they explain that, you kind of see those things. But I was also raising my hand just to comment on the Elizabeth, to thank you for teaching and working in the program at CMC. I visited a friend out there for 25 years when I was at Cal Poly, started through a volunteer program called Match 2. And it really opened my eyes going and visiting him. And he was in the system, went through a number of different prisons. And sadly, CMC is probably, one of the best of the systems, prisons that you could be unfortunately trapped in the system or incarcerated in. He was transferred to Donovan down by San Diego and out in the desert, and then ultimately up in Folsom. But for all of the things you described, it's probably still one of the better ones here than any of the others. But that just opens up a whole another can of worms, if you will, about just the societal issue of how many people we have incarcerated in this country. And back then, when I was paying a little more attention to it, when I was visiting him, we had more incarcerated people, or a walled community, which includes then, the broader circle of their family members and all of the rest of the tragedy that goes with that. But we were only number 2 in the world, only behind the Soviet Union at the time. And I don't know where we are now, but it's a pretty dubious honor that you wouldn't want to be proud of, to be the first in the world as far as the size of an incarcerated population. So it is an issue that, while there's a lot of great opportunities and we have a lot of great things and progress we are making in this country, that's one area that most people don't want to deal with and address or even pay attention to. But when you really look at the size, the volume, and the impact that has, and when you say trapped in the system, what that all entails generationally too for families, it's definitely a societal problem that, through education and regulatory changes, hopefully we can make better strides on and improve. It's really fascinating when you look at what DNA has brought in the way of convictions, and people that are in the system and have been in the system for years, and find out, that they were unfairly and unjustly convicted. So anyway, didn't mean to share all that. Sorry.
I thank you, Pat. And I feel like Cuesta is doing so much.
Yeah.
Like, when we're offering courses there, it reduces their sentence time so they can leave sooner. And then they leave, their transcripts don't have the prison anywhere on them, and they can leave with a degree, and
those certificates are huge. Yeah, because I don't know what it is currently, but I know just a few years ago, when you were released and given $200. So if you don't have a support system, a family, or some other way to help you find an apartment, find a job, get settled, how do you do that on $200? It doesn't really set you up for success. It really exacerbates that recidivism problem, because now you're cast out into the world, depending on how long you've been incarcerated. And if you don't have a support system, you have $200 in your pocket and a bus ticket back to the county where you were incarcerated from. And you've got to try to find a job, or how do you live? You can't even get a place to stay and pay first, last, or anything. So you're in a motel. And as soon as that $200 is gone, your options are not good oftentimes. So yeah, it's huge to get that kind of technical skill and education for those that are incarcerated. So kudos to you for being in there and teaching, and the rest of our team that does that.
I think Bailey, don't you also teach at CMC? Okay.
I hope you got your train of thought back now.
Yes.
For your, oh, good.
I guess I wanted to be here with you all because I appreciate the bravery it takes to be here in the sense that this is a hard read, and I don't want to be alone in this. And Christina, you asked about images and how if they're powerful, and the words are powerful too. And Claudia Rankin, I just really value how she is. I don't want to use the word force because I'm willingly doing this. She provides a really important opportunity for me to be in my body around Black crime and my lack of my white privilege and my lack of bodily violence. And I guess I just also wanted to share that I was reading some not slave narratives, but documentation of a slave holder. And it was gruesome. I thought I've heard it all because I used to work at the Rape Crisis Center and a battered women's shelter. And so I just wanted to own up to the fact that in so many ways I have minimized or desensitized. I've become desensitized to sexual violence that others experience as a coping mechanism. But Claudia Rankin really forces me to try to be in my body around this violence and the violence I don't live with on a day-to-day basis. And having this opportunity just to share that with you is very helpful in building community and doing this together. So thank you for doing this, Christina and Denise, and everyone for showing up.
That's great, Bailey.
Yeah, thank you all for attending. Reading this book just reminds me of personal experiences, but I can see how it could be difficult to read through it. And just this hoodie, I instantly reminded of Trayvon Martin, and I think a Black hoodie is always going to be associated with that child, sadly. So some of these images in here were very thought-provoking, they created emotions. But Mark, I wanted to let you have the floor.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Pat was talking about in terms of the criminal justice system and go back to one of the things that stood out to me about the book was the repetition of the stop and frisk motif, where and I'll read this, you are not the guy, and still you fit the description, because there's always only one guy who is always the guy fitting the description. And in the absence of DNA testing, in the absence of race-blind law enforcement, in the absence of all these things that we need more of, that I think is a lot of the problem in terms of the criminal justice system and incarceration. Is we pick up somebody who fits the description, whether they fit the description or not, because Black people all look alike, to use another stereotype. And I think a lot of people are in prison or in trouble, or simply because of that, because of the blindness of the rest of the culture. And that's one of the real benefits to people like me who grew up in a small white farm town and saw 2 Black people in my life, I think, until I was in college, that, being sensitized to what some of these things look like and feel like. I had a great Black literature class in college, I don't know how many decades ago, that still resonates as one of the best courses I ever took, largely because it exposed me to the ways of perceiving the world by Black writers in Harlem, in Chicago, in Milwaukee, in New Orleans, wherever they might have been, you know, perspectives that I had no clue existed until I started reading these things. And reading books like this just resonates again with that kind of reading that I did 50 years ago, and continue to read. The other thing that struck me, and I'll just say this, the ending of the book, you know, I mean, a lot of it is incidents reported by the writer or by other people to her of being erased for being Black, being not seen, being ignored, being misunderstood, whatever it might be. And that last incident of erasure where she's going to a tennis, going to play tennis and just didn't get seen by somebody in the parking lot. And when she gets home, she's talking about this and she's asked, did you win? And she says, it wasn't a match, it was a lesson. And I think that's really what the whole book is. It's a series of, not easy to read, and I'm not a visual learner, so the images didn't resonate with me like they do with some of the rest of you, but the words do. And the whole book really is a series of lessons in how Black people are perceived by non-Black people.
Yeah, Jesus.
So just for full disclosure, I have not yet read the book, but I did listen to some of the author's videos that she had, and I think that just kind of piggyback on what a lot of y'all are saying, you know, not to really kind of reassert trauma, you know, because when we oftentimes talk about this, you know, like police violence or just dealing with the system, you know, it does kind of bring on this feeling of, you know, like a security apparatus around. You know, I'm not Black, obviously, you know, I'm Mexicano, but there's a lot of similarities, especially with a lot of the folks that I've talked to. It's just this constant policing of us. You know, I remember I was parked in front of the Baptist church in front of Shandon, and I got the police called on me, and right away it wasn't, where's your ID? It's, oh, do you have any guns or crack? You know, and it's just one of those things where you're just like, you know, if this was me, you know, imagine if, you know, I was with other people, you know. So it just adds that level of, you know, just that constant state of, you know, you have rules that you have to abide by, you know, even, you know, I still get this from my mother to like, I got this a couple of days from my mother. She's like, hey, come back early. I don't want you to get pulled over. Why would I get pulled over? I mean, I'm not doing anything bad, you know, but it's just that similarity that, you know, maybe, you know, Black moms and Hispanic and all moms might have, you know, it's any mother's worry to issue. But I really think that when we think about that, and when we think about, you know, guilt, you know, regardless of what our race is or our experiences, whether that's trauma, there's, you know, it all comes down in your bloodstream. That's what I always say, you know, the experiences of our parents will always have intergenerational impact, you know. There was this, and I'm going to get really graphic here, but there was this publication from this slave trader. I believe he was based outside of Barbados in the Caribbean. And he explained the process of the economics of using slaves and how you're supposed to torture the men in front of pregnant women. So the women will be able to tell their children to obey the white masters. If you really start to think about all of this, you know, the Indians in Mexico didn't go through, you know, they went through a lot of the similar things that a lot of, slaves from the African continent did as well. It's like that deep-seatedness, so it's like, I think what we're starting to see is this conversation now. I don't want to get too religious, there I go. But it says, in a lot of esoterics and a lot of scriptures, that after 400 years, the oppressed and the slave will start to rebel, and I think when we start to think about the prison industrial complex, I've had family members that they're incredibly talented, smart people, that have gone into the system, but it does something to them. But some leave with resilience, in understanding the system. And I think it's always just being reiterated through generations. It might look different, but in some aspects it's still the same. There's been dramatic reforms, but it's just one of those things that that's why racism being declared a health crisis, in some ways it can go to address, the mental health impacts that these communities have had, because, mental health is a huge determinant of your lifestyle choices, so if not, we just keep going back into the same play. And just, I think that we really kind of, when hearing these things, we're in places of power or influence, whether that's our position that we are at right now, or our teaching position is just to say, hey, these are some things, but also just kind of awakening, and seeing, hey, what can we do? Can we donate to, for example, there's this film on Netflix, it's called The Central Park 5. They did a whole documentary about what happened, and DNA evidence actually exonerated them years later. And there was this guy, his name was Corey Wise. He started after he got exonerated, he started his own pro bono legal clinic at Colorado Law School. And they work for releasing the wrongfully convicted. And I thought something very profound about that film was when he was in prison after he had gotten beaten and he was in solitary confinement, like an animal, he started to bang his head on the door and started to say, fuck the cops, fuck the judges, and it's just these systems where, hey, maybe the judges or some of the juries might have not known, but they played into the apparatus of a racist place. So, they fit the role, and unfortunately, that's how we wind up in the same place. But yeah, just wanted to say that.
I was just going to mention a local resource that is out there to help the incarcerated and their families. And some of you may know Sister Teresa Harpin, who runs the Restorative Partners group. They're amazing. I ran into them for Book of the Year 4 or 5 years ago when we did Orange is the New Black. We worked with Sister Teresa and her group, and she did some great things, and she was able to bring 50 of the women from the Honor Farm, I think that's right, to the event to hear the speaker, who was a formerly incarcerated person. But there are other ways you can donate. You can't right now go into the prisons and do the work, but typically in a non-pandemic time, they have a lot of roles where you can help. They take donations. We've given different book materials that were donations to Cuesta that we didn't have use for. We've handpicked and given those to the different prison libraries. So there is a local, very active group that is doing some good things.
Yeah, thank you, Jesus, for sharing, and Denise. We're going to take a break, but also do our raffles, Denise.
Yes, Susan, how about if we do all 4 of them? Keep the suspense.
The cute little table.
Okay, so Susan is going to, we have the 4 $10 raffles. Gift cards, your choice, Jamba Juice, Scout, Starbucks, Friends of the Library have paid for this. Library employees are not available to, not eligible to win. Everybody else can. Okay, Susan, go for it.
That includes faculty?
Yeah, you can win.
I want Scout gift cards so bad.
Okay, you are eligible. Susan, unmute.
We're going to do all 4 right now?
Yes, and trustees
Or
are
2?
eligible. I'll do all 4.
Okay.
Take a
Okay,
stretch
here we
break.
go.
I'm
All
so
right.
excited.
All right, our first winner. Spin, spin, spin.
Jamie.
All right.
Congratulations, Jamie.
And Jamie, what I need you to do is send me your email address that you want to get the gift card in, and which of the 3 gift cards would you prefer? Scout, Starbucks, Jamba Juice? It's a big choice. It's a hard decision.
It's hard. You know what? I'll take Jamba Juice, but then I want to donate it back to the library or to
You sure?
or some department that will be able to pass it on to a student.
Oh.
Okay. Well, we will. Okay,
Thank you.
we'll have to think about that. So then I guess I don't need your
Okay.
email address. Okay.
Okay, here we go for card number 2.
Spin, spin, spin.
Uh-oh. It landed on a heart, so we have to put out love for everybody.
She should have said me.
Elizabeth,
All right.
with a heart. The heart went to her.
Okay, and what's your choice, Liz?
I think, can I donate mine too?
Oh, okay. Wow. We've never had this happen before. Okay, we will find a student. Actually, we have a student that's with us today, Paul, who is a library tech student. He's doing his internship, and he's kind of just helping us out and observing. Maybe we want to donate it to Paul. What do you think?
Sounds great.
All right, Paul, you can talk to me about which one of the cards you want, and we still have another one to donate. And then we've got 2 more to spin for. Susan?
There we go.
Take it away.
Pat.
All right. Pat Mullen, our trustee, wins a card. And Pat, which would you like?
Let's see.
And it's okay to take it.
Well, I was, but actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to donate it to my fellow trustee, Trustee Sendejas, because I love his enthusiasm in our board meetings as well as in this meeting. And I figure it wouldn't hurt to do a little more to kind of further our trustee collegiality. So I'm going to model that by donating it to Trustee Sendejas.
Very cool.
Thank you,
All right.
Trustee Pat.
You bet, you bet. And maybe sometime we can meet there for coffee or a Jamba Juice when it's not so COVID restricted. But in the interim, yeah, I'll let you pick. I'll let you pick.
On my card, no worries.
All right, I'll let you pick which one you want, though.
Okay, so Jesus, you just send me your email. Send your email that you want this to, and then if you want to tell me which one you want, and I'll go get it.
Okay, for sure, Denise. I'll email you. And again, thank you, Trustee. Really appreciate it.
Right on, Jesus. Good job, man.
And
Okay.
Jesus, your choice is Jamba, Starbucks, or Scout.
I'll get Jamba Juice because, I like to be healthy, allegedly.
Okay, Jamba Juice, you got it. Thank you. And Susan, our last but not least winner.
Okay, here we go. My cat loves this spinner.
I bet.
Tail.
Bailey!
Oh,
Bailey!
yay.
Bailey!
Okay, and Bailey, you said you wanted Scout?
Yes, yes.
All right.
I will only use it when I treat my students to
Oh,
coffee.
there you go.
Well, $10 won't get you too much, but maybe 2 cups.
2 cups, but I'll pay for my own.
All right. I will send these out within the next day or 2 to all of the winners. Congratulations. Thank you, Susan.
Yay!
Okay, so Christina, how are you feeling? You need a break? You want a stretch break? You want to go get some coffee?
I don't drink coffee, but
Oh, you don't drink.
But does anybody want to get up, stretch or anything? I know we're getting closer, huh? We have about 20 more minutes.
I'm gonna refill mine, but I'll be right back. Keep going.
Okay. That's good. Okay, let's see.
Do we want to think about anybody reading? Like Mark did a little read. Anybody else feel like, does that seem like a right thing to do, or we want to just keep conversing?
I'll read something.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Because as Lacey said, Elizabeth, this is meant to be spoken, and I won't do it justice, but here it goes. This is page 69. Words work as release, well-oiled doors opening and closing between intention, gesture, a pulse in a neck, the stiffiness in the hands, the shiftiness in the hands, an unconscious blink, the conversations you have with your eyes translate everything and nothing. What will be needed, what goes unfelt, unsaid, what has been duplicated, redacted here, redacted there, altered to hide or disguise, words encoding the bodies they cover. And despite everything, the body remains. Occasionally, it is interesting to think about the outburst. If you would just cry out, to know what you'll sound like is worth noting.
Can I read one?
Yeah.
And I would just say, this is page 13. I really like Caesar salad, but in reading this, it made me feel kind of nauseous, and I would not want to eat.
What page is it on?
Page 13.
Okay, thank you.
A woman you do not know wants to join you for lunch. You are visiting her campus. In the cafe, you both order the Caesar salad. This overlap is not the beginning of anything, because she immediately points out that she, her father, her grandfather, and you all attended the same college. She wanted her son to go there as well, but because of affirmative action or minority something, she's not sure what they call it these days. And weren't they supposed to get rid of that? Her son was not accepted. You are not sure if you are meant to apologize for this failure of your alma mater's legacy program. Instead, you ask where he ended up. Where did he end up? The prestigious school she mentions doesn't seem to assuage her irritation. This exchange, in effect, ends your lunch. The salads arrive. So I just imagine this very unpleasant, awkward, I wouldn't even want to eat my salad after that. And it kind of, to me, tied in with something she says in a lot of the end of a lot of the pages or the essays or poems. What did you say? What did you mean? Mm-hmm. Is that what you wanted to say? What are you getting at? And I just thought that echoed almost on every single page.
So personal story about this, but this pertains to page 8, and it talked about the wrong words enter your day like a bad egg in your mouth and pea prints on your blouse, and it just kind of continues on, but it kind of reminds me about what you said. And so here are the notes that I wrote. I'm so frustrated with this situation still, but so it was my 11th wedding anniversary. It was on December 19, 2020. And we were in Dallas, Texas. So it was not that long ago, but we were trying to visit family. So I was trying to get to know more of my Scholler side and find out more of that history. And I wanted to go to Orange, Texas, but that didn't work out. But we were in Dallas. So our 3 kids and my husband, we go to hibachi restaurant and we're excited. And I'm thinking, this is a great experience. The kids have never seen this. I've never seen it. So we're going to definitely make some memories. And as the chef begins, he starts to do like small chat with us. And when he's at our table, he asks a question. And the first question is to my husband. And he says, "Are these your kids?" And so my husband is mixed with white and Mexican, and I'm Black and Mexican. And so our kids are a light tan, and they have, straight brown hair. And my kids, their eyes vary between green and brown. But he did ask my husband that question. So my husband's response was yes. And his response back to my husband is, "So all of these kids are yours?" And then he proceeds to look at my 5-year-old daughter and he goes, "Do you know this man?" Which my daughter obviously goes and says, "Of course, it's my daddy, And so there were a couple of things that ran through my head after that moment. It's like, one, I can come across this hot hibachi stove and slap him, but I did not. And the other thing was, I thought about going to the manager and saying, this is what has happened. But for the sake of my children, I chose to kind of like swallow that. I was very frustrated and I told my husband, which he knew, but I kind of left it at that. And I don't think he really understood the pain that he caused, because that's a stereotype where, Black people may not have this, their kids may not have the same father. Gosh, that story kills me because it was on our wedding anniversary. But what it reminds me of is that it doesn't matter your education, because sometimes people are going to come around and just remind you of your place. And I felt like that man reminded me of my place by stereotyping me and my family. Yeah, and that was only, 2 months ago, but it happened. Yeah, and so my kids ended up asking me, "Oh, what did that man mean by saying that?" My kids are 11 and 10 and 5, and I was like, "Well, this is what he meant." And he didn't realize that was really rude, but you wouldn't go and say something like that, But yeah, that kind of reminded me of that. That was like in the first pages. I was like, oh gosh, it was just so fresh when I started reading this, on the plane back home. But yeah, there are things like that people say. I had joked around. I said, "Oh, could I get into Cal Poly with affirmative action?" And there was a person was like, "No, I don't think so. I don't think Cal Poly would let you in because of your color." But I guess just toward progress, and I got in because of my abilities and skills, which is awesome. But that happens. And thank you, Denise. Thank you. Yeah, we've been together since we were 17 years old. So I hate when people assume, because, we've been together for quite some time. I'm very proud of our relationship. But yeah, that was a moment that actually took place for me.
That's just, you had shared that before. And I just think, oh my gosh, how did you move forward and enjoy the rest of the dinner?
Yeah, well, the food was good, but I think, but I don't think I can't say I would be surprised somebody would say something like that, and I'm very conscious already, because my father was Black, my mother was Mexican, and I know that sometimes they didn't hold hands for that reason, because of what they think other people were thinking, But I think that's why I feel like our relationship with me and my husband, it's so special, is because I want people to know that's my husband. I want people to know that's who I'm in love with. Yeah. But this book, and he's just what you were talking about, it reminds me a lot of my childhood. you know, my dad was very strict with us in the sense of what we wore, how we wore it, what we looked like. And so my brothers never could have their hair grown out. We never wore any braids in our hair. And my dad always was very like, do not wear your clothes. Do not make sure your pants are always at your waist. Make sure you're always dressed properly. And what I didn't realize at the time, but what I realize now is my dad, what he was doing was trying to protect my siblings and me. So there were 6 of us kids, so that wasn't easy. But I look now, and I've had that conversation with my brother. He lives with me, and he goes on walks, walking our dog. But I had that conversation. I said, please don't grow your hair out. Please keep it a shortcut. Like, please be mindful of what you're doing. And I've talked about that so much with him, but I've also had to learn that you can still, that not everybody thinks like that, but it's very hard. It gets instilled in us to be very careful about how we talk, what we look like. My hair is one of those things. I wore my hair straight for every single interview I ever had until this financial aid one, was just because I didn't want one more thing to stigmatize me or put me in that stereotype box. And in reality, I can't replace the color of my skin. It's always going to be this. Unless I'm in the sun a lot, I'll get more tan. But, you know, but that's one of those things. Those are those challenges, you know. Growing up, we talked a lot about, my brother would stay in the house all summer to get as light as possible. And then he would tan right back up because Fresno's really hot and it's always, you know. So, but those are things that we consciously did when we were kids, even into young adults. And I think even the thought process of me selecting someone, I definitely fell in love, but I did consciously think, do I want to be with a Black person? Our kids are going to come out darker. That could be an impact for them in their career and in their life. You know, and even names, we think about names. And today I was talking about, you know, Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, and how impactful was it for him? It was more of a negative impact because of his name. But what if he had a more Americanized name? Would he have had it just a little bit easier on his journey to presidency? So yeah, we kind of do think about these things. And I will say this, Pat, because I don't know if you've seen me, I mean, I'm sure you have, but why I go to these board meetings and why I cry is because I open my heart, which is very uncomfortable for me to do. So I definitely thought I was going to cry when talking about this book, but I just want you to know that when I talk about the resolution and why it was so important, just even eliminating the word Black was so impactful, because it's like, it's just one more thing that's eliminating me and us as students. And I want people to know that, you know, that's why I don't mean to get emotional, but I'm very uncomfortable every time I go to those board meetings, just because anything about race just puts me out there. You know, I had many sleepless nights. Would I lose my job? How is this going to impact my family? But I had to also realize sometimes you have to speak from the heart in order to create change. So I think that's kind of like the blessing and the curse about higher education. It teaches you how to be you, but then when you get there, it's kind of hard to kind of reverse some of that back. So I'm kind of navigating through that, but I really appreciate everybody being here. This book is very powerful. Yeah, it's a very powerful book. And so thank you all for sharing, and thank you for making the progress that you're making. It's not easy, but somebody's got to make the change, start the change. And yeah, and sometimes it's exhausting. I know sometimes I get a little exhausted from it, but yeah, Black Lives Matter has been life-changing for me. I think it was very eye-opening for me. And I think I had to start not accepting, but I think admitting that some of this stuff is bad, and I can't just continuously ignore it for the sake of staying safe, if that makes any sense. So yeah.
Christina, thank you for your honesty and your bravery. I think we all appreciate that. And I don't know. Well, there you go.
you.
Bailey's doing
Yeah,
her heart.
thanks. I don't mean to cry, but
You're not crying.
Don't apologize. It's okay. And I love that about you, and that you have the courage to still speak up and speak from the heart. So
thanks.
I'm sorry it still takes that kind of courage to be able to speak up and do it, but I'm glad you do. So thank you.
Oh, thanks.
Keep doing it. You're doing a great job.
my mother was a bilingual aide, and so she helped students in elementary schools. So I take that to heart, the work that she did. So I hope I make her proud continuously. But yeah, I just think that higher education has so much power, and we're so blessed to be in higher education, because I don't think I would be who I am without it, for sure.
Well, I'm convinced that's the only thing that's really going to have the power to change the way we need to change, and that's education. Mm-hmm. All of higher education, but the most accessible for the most people is at the community college level. Mm-hmm. Obviously, hopefully folks can then go on, but the reach that we have with the community college system, especially in California, it's the largest system there is and the most accessible. So.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you for what you do.
Yeah, thanks. I definitely am a product of that. The fee waivers really helped. And I tell people all the time, it changed my life, and I hope that we can keep helping others have their lives change, because I think some of the work that we're doing, we're not just helping that student, but we're creating generational change.
Yeah, definitely. And someday I would love to talk to you about Orange, Texas, because I've been there. I have a brother-in-law that lives there, and my wife grew up there.
Oh, wow.
She went to high school there.
Oh, I love that.
I know when you said that, I was like, Orange, Texas, nobody even knows where that is.
Yes. Yeah. And so what my grandfather, he's alive still, he's 82 years old. I think he's a little older, but he showed me his ID. So he said, what happened is my white, fourth generation grandfather had like six black kids, and then maybe 5 white children. And there were these riots that broke out, and they call it, I've heard the term, the Great Migration. So they were coming to get, kind of push the black people out. And so my grandfather gave money to his children, and then that's how they ended up in California. And so it makes a lot of sense, because I'm looking at, my great-grandfather, my third generation great-grandfather, I'm looking at his wife, and I'm looking at other families that are, like on maternal and paternal side. And I'm like, why are they all coming from the Texas area, but they're maybe similar cities? And it made complete sense. He said it was because riots had,
It sounds like one of those Lewis Gates Jr. sessions on of Finding My Roots.
Ancestry.
On PBS. I don't know if you've ever seen that show, but it's a great show.
I've always saw all the famous people, and I'm always like, that'll never happen to me. But there's a distant cousin who had a grandmother who said, go trace your, find your family. And he started doing it, and he found me on ancestry.com years ago. And I got his email, and I wasn't very close to my father's side of the family. My dad never really grew up with his father. It was more of his grandparents. So this man asked, do you know Leonard Schollers? And I was like, no. And it really was my grandfather. And so I thought back a couple months later, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my grandfather. And so he gives me this binder, and I'm looking through it, and I go, I have no clue how any of these people are related to me. This is great, but how? And so last September, I reconnected with my grandpa for just a few hours, and he told me so much history. Ancestry.com had a picture of him, of his father, and his grandfather. And so I pulled that form and printed it a couple weekends ago. But man, it's been a really cool journey to kind of learn my history. I think being multiracial, my parents never talked about their history. So I already felt in a gray space because I'm not full Black, I'm not full Mexican, but even just knowing a tidbit, I have history of Confederacy in my family, but I got something really cool out of it. I have a history of somebody in the Confederate, so yeah, but it's really cool. And hey, maybe you can show me around Orange, Texas sometime.
I think we had two more. I think Elizabeth had something, and then Susan wanted to talk about Orange, Texas too. So maybe two more comments, and then I think we're probably winding down. Elizabeth?
Oh, I think I was just gonna ask Christina to tell us more, and she did. So I'm good. Thank you.
Susan, what were you going to say about Orange, Texas?
Yeah, I just wanted to know where it was. I grew up in Texas, but it was Mineral Wells, Fort Worth, Dallas, Waco area. Where is Orange, Texas?
I feel like it's further south. Is that right, Pat?
Yeah, it's right on the Sabine River. So it is the extreme southeast part of Texas. It's as much as of Louisiana as you would think of Texas. It's in the swamps kind of down there, right off I-10. I-10 goes right through it. There's Beaumont, Texas, and then you go further east. So there's Houston, and then you go east to Beaumont, and you go further east, and just at the Louisiana border is Orange, Texas. And it's called the Golden Triangle: Orange, Texas, Port Arthur, and one other, and I can't remember the other town.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say quickly, Christina, how much I put it in chat, but how much I admire you role modeling what it is to be truly genuine, authentic, and brave today. And like you inspire me to be that way. So I'm sure that wherever you go in the world, you are inspiring whoever's around you to be that way. And that makes the world a better place in my mind. But I just wanted to say, growing up in Texas and hearing the story in the restaurant with your children, that was so painful to listen to, because I felt like I was just right there with you in that restaurant, just from growing up in Texas. And just, I can't believe that that happened to you 2 years ago. Is that what you said?
Oh, no, it was 2 months ago. Yeah.
2 months ago.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff, like I call it stuff, which is not the right word, but abuse, racism, ignorance, could go on. Like that was going on back when I was a child. Like, I can't believe like that is so present day still. And so it was really painful for me to hear. It really, it was painful, but necessary kind of pain to hear. So I want to thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I had an amazing time in Dallas, Texas. I would probably go back. I told my husband, like, you think about moving here at all? But
that restaurant.
Man, yeah, I would go there for their orange chicken. I'm telling you, it was delicious. Okay, people,
Okay.
But I'd probably do it to go. I would.
Yeah, definitely.
But thank you so much. If anything, I mean, just showing up to events like this or supporting other students of color, encouraging them, I always tell students, Cuesta is big, but not too big. There's always going to be somebody able to help you, and just pitching an idea or allowing them to cultivate ideas with you is amazing. And I think some students just need that. Or sharing resources, pushing them, we have a Cuesta BSU club, and if you see a Black student, a lot of the times they don't even know that there's other Black students here. And I think that's probably one of the harder things to hear. But that does happen. And so, yeah, I want to help change that. That's my biggest goal this year, I think, is to bring more awareness about some of the CMC students that we have here and giving them a voice. So Gregory's the start for me, but I hope to continue that.
I think Jesus had one last comment, and then I want to be mindful of our time, and we'll wrap things up. Jesus.
I just think one thing with the book, and obviously, Christina, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I just think it really kind of hones in onto the point that Black History Month is not just the past, but it's the present, and it's also the future of where we go,
Yeah.
And if we only hear one perspective of America, then we don't know the whole truth. So I just think that we need to have these, like opportunities where we're able to discuss a piece of literature and really kind of to think about how we can actually foment and cement intellectuality in our more marginalized communities. Because education is liberation. It liberates us in the cage that we're from, regardless of our background. So I just think that, ethnic studies, would be something that we should all advocate or at least be knowledgeable about, especially this Black History Month. And thank you, Christina, again, and Denise, and everyone, Pat, for showing up, and numerous faculty members and our classified staff at the library. Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, it's been a really good session. We didn't quite know where we would go, but I think we went into a lot of places and it was all really quite valuable and impactful. Please go to some of the other Black History Month events and I'll send you that link again to the page where that is, and I'll send you the link to our future book clubs. Thank you, Christina. Thank you to our trustees and everybody else that came. And with that, I think I will turn you loose on the afternoon.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Sharing.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye now.
And Jamie, I live in Morro Bay, so I'll drop off your paint kit.
Oh, yes. I'm excited. Okay.
Yeah. And Allie, if you want to sign up, or any of you want to sign up for the paint kit, we're having a paint night next Tuesday. Yeah.
That'll be so much fun. Thanks,
Yeah.
Christina.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks,
Take care,
Christina.
everybody.
Hey, Christina, do you have my address?
Yeah, you've filled out the form. It's on there.
When do you think you'll come by? I'm gonna be in class. I have class tonight, or from 4 to 6-ish.
What's today? Thursday?
Today's Thursday.
Do I have anything late? I don't think so. I can just drop it off outside your door. You don't have to come out. Yeah.
I'd like to say hi, but if
okay.
If that's what works best for you.
Then, I mean, I can drop it off Friday too. It doesn't, as long as it's before Tuesday.
Okay. All right, whatever works for you.
Okay. I'll message you.
Okay.
Great. Take care. Bye.